Welcome to This Month in Type 1 Research. Please check the description for the original sources, and all content is general in nature and should not be considered medical advice.
It's good to be back. And looking at the stack of papers from January 2026, I have to say, I think we need to temper our excitement a little bit this month.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a glowing endorsement to start us off. I mean, usually you're the one hyping up the new tech.
I know. And look, there is good tech news.
Yeah.
But when you really dig into the data we've got today, especially around AI and some of these physiological metrics, we're seeing that newer isn't always safer.
Okay.
And we're seeing that, the human body is still it's significantly more complex than the code we're writing to try and manage it.
That's fair. So the mission for this deep dive is really to separate the science fiction from the actual usable science.
Exactly.
We're talking AI carb counting, which I know everyone wants to hear about. We're looking at why our feet might be, snitching on our heart health, and then the psychology of resilience.
Right. And if I had to put a theme on this month, it's not really technology, it's connection.
Connection.
Yeah. We're finding that you can have the best algorithm in the world,
Yeah.
ChatGPT or the latest pump. But if you ignore the biological messiness of the person using it or the nerves in their feet, you're missing the whole picture.
It feels like we're moving from just managing numbers to, managing the whole person, the whole ecosystem.
That's the goal.
So let's start with the algorithm, because that is the big headline grabber, a study by Goncalves and colleagues. The setup here, it feels like a showdown.
It is the ultimate dinner party trick, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, the whole premise is something I have personally wanted for years. I want to take a picture of my plate. Let's say it's messy, like lasagna with garlic bread.
Yeah.
And just have my phone go, that's 65 grams of carbs. No math, no guessing.
No digging the package out of the trash.
Exactly. And that is what they tested. They wanted to see if these general purpose large language models, the AI chatbots we all use, could actually do this medical task.
So they took photos of 30 different meals.
Yeah.
Some simple, some really complex, and they fed them to the big three. ChatGPT 4.0, Gemini Pro Vision, and Claude 3.5.
And who are they up against?
6 trained dietitians, the humans.
Okay, now play devil's advocate for a second. My gut instinct says the AI should crush this. I mean, it has a database of every lasagna recipe ever posted. It can, in theory, estimate volume from pixels. Why would a human be better?
You'd think so, right? But carb counting isn't just identifying food. It's about volumetric estimation. And, maybe more importantly, identifying hidden ingredients.
What do you mean?
An AI sees a sauce. A human looks at that same sauce and thinks, okay, that looks really glossy. Do they use cornstarch to thicken it? Is there sugar in that marinade? It's a kind of culinary intuition.
So the AI lacks the physics of food. It doesn't get density and depth.
Exactly. And the results really proved it. The dietitians, the humans, had what's called a mean absolute error of about 13 grams.
13 grams. Wait, even the pros are off by that much. That actually seems kind of high to me.
And that's an incredibly important point right there. Carb counting is an imperfect science. Even the best of us are guessing. But, 13 grams is generally considered manageable. Your correction factor can usually handle that without a major incident.
Okay, so that's our baseline. 13 grams. How did the AIs do?
Well, not great. ChatGPT was the best of the bots, but it had an error of around 20 grams.
20? Okay.
Claude was at 23 grams. And Gemini really struggled. It was missing by nearly 28 grams on average.
Wow. Okay, hold on. If I'm eating a huge meal, like 100 carbs, being off by 20 grams it's not great, but is it dangerous?
Well, it really depends on which way the error goes. And this is the part of the study that genuinely worried me. They didn't just look at the average error. They specifically looked at large overestimations.
Define that for us.
They defined it as a system guessing the carb count to be 20 grams or more higher than it actually was.
Which means I take too much insulin.
Precisely. If the AI says your plate is 80 carbs, but it's actually only 50, and you dose for that 80,
I'm on the floor in 2 hours? That's a bolus for food that just doesn't exist.
you are crashing. And the rates here were just alarming. Gemini had a large overestimation rate of 38%.
38%. So more than 1 out of every 3 meals, it was recommending a dose that could cause a severe low.
Yes, that's what the data says. A 38% chance of being told to effectively overdose.
That is terrifying. How did the dietitians compare?
Their rate was 3%.
3.
See, humans naturally err on the side of caution. We tend to undercount just a little because we instinctively fear the low. The AI, it has no fear. It hallucinates a number based on pattern matching.
So the big takeaway here is not just AI isn't ready, it's Do not, under any circumstances, trust your safety to a chatbot right now.
Not for dosing, no. Use it as a second opinion, maybe. Let it help you identify an ingredient you might have missed. Oh, right, there are chickpeas in that salad, but don't let it do the final calculation. It's a co-pilot that's legally blind.
That is a very sobering reality check. But let's pivot to the tech that is working. We've got 2 studies this month, one from Riveline and one from Akiyama, looking at automated insulin delivery systems.
Right, specifically the Omnipod 5 and the MiniMed 780G.
And what really stands out here is it's what they're measuring. For so long, every study was about A1C, A1C, A1C.
And maybe time and range if you were lucky.
Right. But these studies are looking squarely at the human experience. The Riveline study looked at adults on the tubeless system versus a sensor-augmented pump. And the big wins weren't just about glucose, they were about sleep.
Sleep quality. It is maybe the most undervalued metric in all of diabetes management. The study showed the aid system significantly improved sleep quality.
And we have to unpack why that's so important.
It's a huge ripple effect. When you sleep better, your insulin sensitivity is better the next day, your cognitive function is better, your mood is better.
It makes a world of difference. If I'm not waking up 3 times a night to an alarm, or just because I feel a low coming on, I am a completely different person the next day.
Of course. They also measured the impact of diabetes on daily life. And I just love that phrasing because diabetes has this blast radius. It hits your schedule, your spontaneity, your mental energy.
And the Akiyama study found something similar, right? They were looking at people switching from the 770G to the 780G pump.
Correct. And for people who don't know the difference, the big step up of the 780G was the introduction of automatic correction boluses.
So it's more aggressive. If you start to go high, it doesn't just nudge your basal rate up, it gives you a little shot of insulin.
It's more proactive, yeah. A little microbolus.
Yeah.
And the study found that this specific feature, the autocorrection, was a major driver in reducing distress and improving treatment satisfaction.
It seems like the tech is finally starting to service the lifestyle, not just the lab value. It's less about getting a perfect A1C and more about just getting your life back.
That is the new paradigm. We're moving from, glucocentric care to person-centric care. And any tech that reduces that cognitive load, that mental burden, is just as valuable as something that drops your A1C by half a point.
I couldn't agree more. If I can sleep through the night, that's a win. But speaking of signals and alarms, let's unpack this next segment. We're moving into physiology. And we have to talk about feet.
Yes, the feet.
I saw this headline about pseudomotor dysfunction, and I thought, okay, are we talking about sweaty gym socks? But you're telling me this is actually about heart health. Connect the dots for us. How on earth does foot sweat predict a heart attack?
It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
This comes from a study by Naskrit and his colleagues, and they were looking at, pseudomotor dysfunction. Pseudomotor just refers to the autonomic nerves that control your sweat glands.
Okay, got it.
Now, why the feet? Well, think about the anatomy. The nerves that travel from your spinal cord all the way down to the sweat glands on the soles of your feet, they're the longest nerves in your entire body.
They have the farthest to travel.
Exactly. And crucially, these specific nerves are something called unmyelinated C fibers.
Unmyelinated? What does that mean?
Think of an electrical wire without the plastic insulation. They're very thin and they're very exposed. And because of their length and that lack of protection, they're often the very first things to get damaged by metabolic stress.
So from high blood sugar, inflammation, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So they are the canary in the coal mine for neuropathy. Long before you might feel numbness or tingling in your toes, which involves bigger insulated nerves, these little sweat nerves start to malfunction.
Okay, so if my feet aren't sweating properly, it means my nerves are taking a hit. But how do we get from there to my carotid artery in my neck?
Because the system that controls that sweating, the autonomic nervous system, is the same system that regulates your heart rate, your blood pressure, and the tone of your blood vessels.
Yeah.
It's all one big network.
So if the wire going to the foot is frayed, it's a proxy signal that the wires going to the heart and the blood vessels might be damaged too.
That is precisely the hypothesis. And the data really backed it up. The researchers used a device called a pseudoscan. It's super simple. You just stand on a metal plate for about 2 minutes. It sends a tiny, painless electrical current through your feet.
And what's it measuring?
It measures electrochemical skin conductance, which is basically a fancy way of saying how well the chloride ions in your sweat are moving. Low conductance means your sweat nerves aren't working well.
And the finding?
The patients with lower skin conductance, the poor sweat response, had significantly thicker carotid artery walls.
Whoa, that's the CIMT measurement, right? Carotid intima media thickness.
Yes, and that's a direct marker of atherosclerosis, of hardening of the arteries.
Hmm.
What they found was that this simple 2-minute foot scan correlated with patients having a vascular age that was sometimes years older than their actual biological age.
That is it's wild. So I could be 30 years old, feel totally fine, but my foot scan says my autonomic system is acting like a 50-year-old's.
And that implies your blood vessels are aging at that accelerated rate as well, yes. Even if your cholesterol looks totally normal on a standard blood test.
That just changes the whole conversation because we usually wait for symptoms. We wait for the chest pain or the high blood pressure reading. This is saying we can look under the hood maybe 5 or 10 years earlier.
And that's the dream, right?
Hmm.
Catching cardiovascular risk before it becomes a cardiovascular event.
Hmm.
If your feet are signaling that your autonomic system is in trouble, it's a huge cue to get really aggressive with managing your lipids, your blood pressure, and your overall glucose.
It's amazing how it's all one system. You think of complications as these separate buckets, eyes, kidneys, nerves, heart, but it's really not.
It's not. And that leads us perfectly into the next study, which is about metabolic memory.
Yes. I love this concept. It sounds almost poetic, but it's pure biology. This study from Tang and colleagues looked at skin AGEs.
Right. Advanced glycation end products, AGs.
The acronym is just perfect because they literally age you.
They absolutely do. Think of AGs as biological rust. Or a kitchen analogy I like is browning toast. That reaction that turns bread brown and tasty. That's glycation. It's sugar binding to proteins. And it happens inside our bodies, too.
And once that toast is burnt, you can't unburn it.
It's very, very difficult to reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we rely on HbA1c, which gives us a picture of the last 3 months. It's like a quarterly report.
Yeah.
But skin AGs, they tell the story of the last decade.
It's your permanent record.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And the study found that the level of these AGEs in the skin was a better predictor of microvascular complications, so eye and kidney issues, than the person's current HbA1c or even their time in range.
So even if my numbers are great right now, if I had, say, 5 really tough years of management a decade ago, those AGEs are still there.
They are. The body remembers. This is what validates the whole concept of metabolic memory.
Have to be honest, that sounds a little discouraging. If I'm listening and had a really rough time as a teenager, am I just doomed? Is the damage done?
No, not at all. And it's so important we frame this correctly. It's not about being doomed. It's about understanding your personal risk profile more accurately. If we know you have a higher burden of this metabolic memory, then maybe we screen your eyes more frequently. Maybe we're more aggressive with medications to protect your kidneys. Knowledge is power.
So it stops us from flying blind with just a 3-month A1C.
Exactly. And on the flip side, it reinforces the idea that consistent management over many years builds a protective buffer. Every good day you put in the bank now is protecting you 10 years from now. It's the legacy effect.
I like that framing much better. It's an investment in your future self.
Precisely.
All right, let's shift gears to the human element. We've talked tech, we've talked physiology. Let's talk about the mind. Because you can have the best tech and the best understanding of your body, but if you are burned out, none of it matters.
That is the absolute truth. We have a great study here from Zhang and colleagues looking at resilience in adolescents. And what I love is that they didn't just look at the kid.
Right, they looked at the whole family.
Yes. They made a distinction between self-resilience, so the kid's own personal grit, and family resilience.
Which just makes so much sense. Diabetes doesn't happen to a person, it happens to a household.
It's a grenade thrown right into the middle of the family routine. It disrupts everything: meals, sleep, finances. And what Zane's team found is that we've been kind of focusing on the wrong thing. We focus on the teen asking, why aren't you managing this better?
But if their whole environment is chaotic.
Right. If the family unit itself is rigid, if they panic over every high number, if there's fighting over who forgot to pack the supplies, if communication breaks down, that creates a low resilience environment. And the kid just absorbs all that stress.
And stress hormones raise blood sugar. It's a vicious cycle.
It is. The study found that when the family unit is resilient, meaning they're adaptable, they communicate well, they problem solve as a team, it acts as a powerful buffer. High family resilience directly led to better self-management behavior from the team.
You know, I think this is so validating for parents. Sometimes you feel like your only job is to be the diabetes police or the supply manager. But this data says your emotional stability, how you roll with the punches as a family, that's a medical intervention.
It truly is. Strengthening those family bonds, working on communication, even going to family therapy. These aren't just nice-to-have things. They are tools that directly improve clinical outcomes. You treat the family to treat the diabetes.
And that theme of support carries right over into this next study by Roberts, which looked at young adults, the dreaded transition years.
The cliff, that time between, say, 18 and 25 where you leave pediatric care, you move out, you start a new job, and for so many, diabetes management just falls off a cliff.
It's a really vulnerable time, and this study looked at instrumental support. Can you distinguish that for us? How is that different from just, being a supportive friend?
So emotional support is saying, I know this is hard, I love you, you can do this, and that's vital. We need that.
Mm.
But instrumental support is tangible. It's saying, hey, I picked up your insulin prescription because I know you're working late.
Oh.
Or I made a low-carb dinner so you don't have to think about a complex bolus tonight. Or I woke you up because you slept through your Dexcom alarm.
It's physical help. It's taking on one of the tasks.
It's outsourcing a piece of the executive function.
Yeah.
Diabetes is a huge cognitive load.
Mm.
Instrumental support is when someone else carries, say, 10% of that load for you for a little while.
That is such a huge distinction. I think a lot of partners or friends, they want help, but they don't know how, so they just offer encouragement. This data says, do the laundry, pay the copay for the supplies, do a physical thing.
Exactly. And the study found that high levels of this instrumental support, along with lower levels of diabetes stigma, were directly linked to better outcomes.
It just highlights that this lone wolf approach does not work. Even as an adult, you still need a team.
You absolutely do. The idea that you have to handle this all on your own often leads to higher anxiety and worse outcomes. Nobody should have to carry that entire load by themselves.
So if you're a friend or a partner listening, go pick up that prescription. That's love. And it's also good medicine.
Well said.
Okay, we have one final segment, and this one really looks to the future. It's about prevention and screening.
Yes, we're in a completely new era now because we can find type 1 diabetes so much earlier with autoantibody screening. We can identify what we call stage 1 and stage 2 before a person ever needs a single drop of insulin.
But that raises a massive question. If I find out I'm in stage 1, what do I do? Am I just supposed to sit around and wait for the other shoe to drop? It feels almost cruel to tell someone if you can't stop it.
And that's exactly what this review by Lai and colleagues is all about. It's trying to move us away from that feeling of helplessness. It reviews lifestyle strategies for people in early stage T1D.
So what are they? Is it just the standard eat healthy, exercise more?
It's a bit more specific. The focus is on reducing beta cell stress. The idea is if we can reduce the demand on the beta cells you have left, we might be able to preserve them for longer.
Okay.
So the recommendations focus on things like low glycemic index diets and moderate, consistent physical activity.
So basically, eating in a way that doesn't spike your blood sugar like crazy and moving your body.
Right. It's not about curing the autoimmune attack. That's still happening in the background. But if you can keep the demand for insulin low, you might delay that crash into stage 3, into clinical onset. And every month you can keep making your own insulin is a huge win for long-term health.
It gives people a sense of agency. They're not just sitting ducks. They can take action.
And that leads into the very last piece we want to touch on, which is a debate piece by Gettleman and Malone about the ethics of all this screening.
The whole paternalism versus partnership debate.
Yeah. Historically, the medical view was pretty paternalistic. Why tell someone they might get T1D? It'll just scare them. We can't stop it anyway. We should protect them from the burden of that knowledge.
The ignorance is bliss argument.
But ignorance can be really dangerous. The consensus is shifting very quickly toward partnership. We now have therapies like teplizumab that can actually delay onset. But even without drugs, just knowing allows you to monitor. It prevents DKA.
Right. If you know you're at risk, you catch it at the first sign. You don't end up in the ICU in a coma because nobody knew it was happening.
Exactly. The risk of DKA at diagnosis plummets in screened populations. So the argument now is, don't protect people from the news. Partner with them. Give them the knowledge and the tools to handle what's coming.
It feels like that word empowerment is the thread tying this whole deep dive together, whether it's empowering families or empowering patients with AI but teaching them the limits, or empowering people in stage 1 to take charge.
I agree completely. The research is finally moving from just keeping people alive to keeping them well mentally, socially, and physically.
And on that note, let's wrap this up. We've covered so much. AI is learning, but it is definitely not leading. So watch out for that 38% error rate. Your feet might be telling you secrets about your heart. And please remember, resilience is a team sport. Lean on your people.
And never, ever underestimate the value of a good night's sleep.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for breaking all this down with us.
My pleasure.
Remember to like and subscribe, follow the link in the channel description to buy me a coffee, and thank you for listening.